who's on here to be aware. And on that note, I think I will hand it over to Elodie to kick us off. And welcome to everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Dear participants, thank you so much for joining this session. I'd like to start off by recognizing the panelists on this session today: Richard Mufama, Country Director, International Growth Center, Rwanda; Tony Rutaisire, Rwanda TVET Board; Viterio Bassi, Assistant Professor at the University of Southern California; Viator Zabanita, Head of Strategic Capacity Development at RDB under Skills Office; Xoyan Liang, Lead Education Specialist from World Bank; Alex Nale, CEO, ICT Chamber; Ashim Agunjobi, Country Manager, Elevate Education Nigeria and African Region. Welcome and greetings to everyone. My names are Didier Lodiru-Sera, Chief Skills Officer at Rwanda Development Board, and it is my privilege to be here today and pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar. We also really appreciate International Growth Center for collaborating with us to organize this very important discussion today. Thank you for honoring our invitation to be part of this discussion on the role of ICT in technical and vocational education training, TVET, and the future of work. Organized, as we earlier highlighted, by RDB Skills Office in collaboration with the International Growth Center. We are really delighted to have you on here today. As we all know, skills development and employment promotion are central to Rwanda's transformation and to the vision we have as a country, aiming to become an upper middle income country by 2035 and ultimately a high income country by 2050. Therefore, RDB, through the Chief Skills Office, has the mandate of promoting decent and productive employment throughout the country through private sector development and promoting employability skills among youth. The Chief Skills Office also provides effective oversight and coordination of the relevant stakeholders in the skills development and employment promotion ecosystem. This positions us as the apex body that coordinates relevant stakeholders and initiates innovative ways in skills development and employment promotion. I hope you can all hear me clearly. I just had a notification that you may not be hearing me. I hope I'm loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Where I left off, I wanted to talk about our interventions that are informed by the National Skills Development and Employment Promotion Strategy, which is based on three main pillars. The first pillar is skills development, second is employment promotion, and the third is matching of skills with labor market needs. In all of this, the pillars that are highlighted in our National Skills Development and Employment Promotion Strategy highlight the current challenges faced in the TVET sector. And it also advances practical recommendations that can be employed to promote and improve TVET education in response to the labor market needs. To date, the government has promoted rapid response training, which is a transition from school to the labor market. The internees are taken to companies, and often over 70% are taken on by the host companies. These internees come from the TVET sector, and it's implemented by Rwanda Polytechnics and the new TVET board that used to be formerly WTDA. In today's webinar, you will learn about the government's strategy regarding TVETs and the new evidence on skill certification, in addition to international best practices on TVET design and management. Additionally, today in this webinar, we will cover the critical role of ICT in implementing the government's TVET strategy and successful approach to ensure that the Rwanda labor force is competent in an increasingly digital market. We are looking forward to an open discussion, a fruitful discussion that seeks to inform and educate both sides so that no one is left behind in Rwanda's transformation agenda. So prepare yourselves for a challenge for something exciting and to also be inspired. And before I hand it over to the next speaker, I want to once again extend my sincere appreciation to all of you joining us here today, and we hope you'll find this session insightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elodie. I'm now going to invite Richard Mufama from the International Growth Center, Country Director, to give a few opening remarks. You're on mute, Richard.
How's that? Okay. Thanks everybody for attending, and it's a particular pleasure for me to be here and discuss this issue with you, but more importantly, learn about Rwanda's strategy going forward. It's difficult to imagine a more important part of discussions of labor markets than thinking about the TVET sector. If you think about the challenges that countries like Rwanda face, we see that the TVETs play an important role in three respects. First of all, education and skilling generally are really important for productivity growth for the overall economy. Secondly, and as part of that, the structural transformation process, moving workers out of subsistence agriculture into higher productivity jobs, becomes really important. And so education and skilling are important for that. Secondly, they create opportunities. The TVETs create opportunities for people, particularly for youth and women coming into the labor force new. This is important because if growth is to be inclusive, it has to involve the less well-educated and those with lesser opportunities. So the TVET sector plays, I think, an important role in that. And the third element, which I think is really important, is the nature of the growth process in developing countries tends to be skill biased. It tends to create jobs for skilled workers at a more rapid rate than it does for unskilled workers. And what that means is that there is a tendency in the growth path to become unequal over time as there is a wage widening effect that occurs. In fact, I think we'll see a slide on China that shows exactly that. So if the country can produce more skilled labor, it reduces the skill bias of the labor market and reduces the inequalities in the labor market. So that's the third reason why I think TVETs are terribly important. Anna Chuma and I did a paper, and I'm going to show you a graph if I can, that just a table that shows you the labor market, because I think it illustrates well some of the problems that the country may confront. Can you see this screen here, Anna?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on just one moment. Let's try that. Does that get you there? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This graph shows you the distribution of employment across various sectors down this axis and total employment here, as well as the changing share of employment in Rwanda. And I think what's interesting about this is we've divided into three sectors, what we're calling industries without smokestacks. That is, new activities that are sort of non-traditional activities, mainly urban-based, some services, some category, some quasi-manufacturing activities, but they all have the characteristic of being generally high productivity. Secondly, they are tradable. And thirdly, they employ a lot of workers. And so we divided these industries without smokestacks in this first line, manufacturing, and then other industries down here. What we see in this period of 2000 to 2017 is a very rapid increase in the if you can see this here, in the what we're calling the industries without smokestack sectors. That is, they're growing at a much more rapid rate. This includes, for example, construction and tourism, importantly. ICT, transport is also another important sector. So the point of this is to show that, meanwhile, down here, if you look at subsistence agriculture, you see that its share has declined from 87% to something like 67% over this period. Workers are moving out of agriculture into these other more modern sectors. The second point that I think comes out of this is that we have to think, when we think about education and skilling, we have to think of it in broader terms than simply manufacturing. In the case of Rwanda, for example, only a relatively small share of workers are involved in manufacturing. Rather, much more important is the service sector, and particularly in this case, tourism, ICT, and the like. And in that sense, I think it's important to realize that education along with overall skills are important. I wanted to show you also this graph, which shows where Rwanda ranks against other countries as a share of comparing education spending as a share of government spending and education as a share of GDP. What we see is that basically Rwanda is kind of lagging in this area. So the work that the RDB is doing, the work that the government overall as part of its human capital formation efforts is doing is really very important. So it's in that regard that I think that this seminar is going to be particularly important to think about ways to improve, to increase education expenditures, but more importantly, getting bigger bang for the buck. That is, how can Rwanda raise the quality of its overall TVET system along with the rest of its educational system. So with that, let me turn the microphone back to Anna and whoever else is next on the list. But let me say thank you, first of all, for the RDB's effort. For one thing, they've helped me learn a new skill today in the Cisco WebEx system. So I have a personal takeaway from this as part of the system. So thanks very much. Anna, back to you.
Thank you so much, Elodie and Richard. So let's move on to our next presenter, and this is Tony Rutayisire from the Rwanda TVET Board. He's going to take us through Rwanda's overall TVET strategy, the role of the Rwanda TVET Board, and in his opinion, what he sees to be challenges and opportunities for expanding TVET education in Rwanda. So Tony, you can just pull up your presentation and then we can get things going.
Do you have my presentation?
We can see it clearly.
I can see it.
If you can also put your video on so everyone can see the face behind the presentation, that would be great.
Okay.
Tony, are you ready to go?
Yeah, let me first see my video. Okay. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much, RDB, for having Rwanda TVET Board and having me. I'm going to share with you a very brief summary of the overview of Rwanda TVET strategy along the talk points that I was shared with. First, I want us to look at the timeline for the TVET system in Rwanda. And I just had a small overview about it. And you can look at the years, where I've moved from 1994. Of course, that is the dark spot of our history, but also the turning point of so many things in Rwanda. And that is where TVET actually starts from. But between 1994 and 2008, you can see that TVET was no priority so much. It had not a very good reputation. It was looked at as a second choice for most of the students and parents. Not until in 2008 when government turned up everything, because there was a very big gap of skilled labor force that would deliver the country into the Vision 2020, and then they decided to revamp the TVET system. And in 2008, that is when most of the TVET reforms actually happened. That is when the first TVET policy was drafted and approved in 2008. And that is when we had what we called the Workforce Development Authority. It was also established. We also had a few IPRCs, or what you would call integrated polytechnic regional centers, that were spread all over the country. And of course, Workforce Development Authority was established to oversee them and promote their provision of TVET programs. Fast forward 2015, we had a revision of the TVET policy. And in 2018, Rwanda Polytechnic was established to take some of the responsibilities that Workforce Development Authority had, so that Workforce Development Authority remains with some few responsibilities of standards, accreditation, and exams. And then there was also Rwanda TVET Trainers Institute, was also established in 2018 to take care of the TVET trainers, so that it can train TVET trainers that will go down to provide TVET programs in TVET schools. And fast forward 2020, that is also when we had another big restructuring, when we are supposed to, most of the responsibilities and TVET institutions that were in existence, by that time they had to be streamlined so that most of the functions are put in the right institutes. So that is basically the timeline and the history of TVET in Rwanda after 1994. A quick current status of the TVET in Rwanda. You can see we have 366 TVET schools right now. Those are lower level TVET schools, that is VTCs and TSSs. And we have 8 public IPRCs and also 9 private polytechnics. We also have 5 special academies. These are special academies we have Rwanda Coding Academy, we have an academy for multimedia, we have an academy for music and arts and others. You can see currently, actually in by Feb 2020, we had approximately 85,000 TVET trainees and 4,800 TVET trainers. There was a tracer survey that was carried on in 2019 about the TVET situation of their graduates. And the latest showed that 70.3% of the TVET graduates can actually secure a job in 6 months from graduation. And 75% of the employers of TVET graduates are actually satisfied with their skills and attitudes. Next, we want to look at the highlights of the Rwanda TVET strategy, and the objectives of that strategy is mainly to enhance the existing TVET system so that it can deliver the right labor force that we need, that is actually relevant to the Rwandan labor market and also the international labor market. But specifically, the strategy is aiming at making, you remember I told you some time back before, between 1994 and 2008, the TVET was not that very attractive. Nothing much was being said about TVET. And actually, very few parents and students saw hope in TVET. So the strategy here is aiming at attracting and improving the attractiveness of TVET, making TVET programs accessible and affordable, to promote the relevance of the TVET in the labor market, actually bringing on board, increase the private sector involvement in TVET. That is going to be very, very good for the TVET. Improve coordination of TVET initiatives, especially initiatives, projects, initiatives, development partners. Coordination of that is also going to be very good. It is also aiming at promoting the responsiveness of TVET to national transformation challenges. It is also promoting competent-based training approach, promoting vertical and horizontal pathways. It is very keen on human capacity development within the TVET system, especially with the TVET trainers. It is also very keen on improving the situation of equipment, consumables, infrastructures, which is a bit wanting right now in TVET schools, and also prepare the TVET system and align it to the forthcoming industrial revolution that actually we are already in. Moving forward, also on the highlights of the TVET strategy, we are looking at its policy framework. It draws a lot of from the existing policy framework that is there. We are looking here at the education sector policy that was approved in 2003. We are looking at the TVET policy that was approved in 2008, but revised in 2015. It also draws from the other policies like the ICT policy in education, the national STI policy, and also from the education sector strategic plan. So it gets the TVET gets most of the guidelines from this existing policy framework. Important also is the qualification framework that TVET is currently using. In 2012, there was what we call the Rwanda TVET qualification framework, but it was revised and harmonized with the entire education qualification framework. So when you look at this diagram, when you're keen on the blue lane, on the blue track, you'll see where the TVET qualification framework falls. It is composed of seven out of the 10 levels, with level 1 and 2 being for VTCs, vocational training centers, level 3 to 5, which is the TSS, technical secondary schools, and after level 5, the graduates will get a national advanced certificate for technical education. And then level 6 and 7 is the diploma and advanced diplomas respectively in the Polytechnics. So that is where the TVET qualification spectrum falls within the entire Rwanda education qualification framework that was approved in 2016. When we move on to the institutional framework of the TVET in Rwanda, we look at the institutions that are providing actually the TVET programs, which are the vocational training centers that cater for level 1 and 2, and also some adult TVET education at that level. Then when you get to level 3 and 5, we have the TVET secondary schools. After TVET secondary schools, students can choose, because of the vertical and horizontal pathways, students can choose to actually continue to Polytechnics or go to other higher learning institutions. So next we have the Polytechnics, where we get Rwanda Polytechnic as the umbrella of all government polytechnics, which are called IPRCs. And also we have so many other private polytechnics. Then at that level also we have what we call the RTTI, Rwanda TVET Trainers Institute, which I mentioned earlier, that is going to cater for training of TVET trainers, specifically TOTs. And very recently, there was a Rwanda TVET board that has been established late last year, that is going to cater for promotion of quality TVET programs in level 3 to level, level 1 to level 5, of course, excluding the Polytechnics. Then we also have NESA, which is also a new entity that has been established to specifically cater for examination and school inspections. So some of the responsibilities that were earlier in Rwanda Education Board were put in this entity, and it's also going to cover exams and inspection for TVET schools. Then Higher Education Council has been there, but they have added a component for TVET, TVET accreditation, and TVET accreditation in the tertiary institutions, in the Polytechnics actually. Then we come to the Rwanda TVET board that I've just talked about that has been established. What is the role? What was the mind behind establishing Rwanda TVET board? Rwanda TVET board was established last year, I think in October, specifically with a mandate of promoting quality TVET training in level 1 and level 5 of the TVET education qualification framework. So this is an entity that is going specifically to be focusing on VTCs and TSS, and also the special programs or special academies, and some other special programs that come in terms of projects, but specifically looking at level 1 to level 5 of Rwanda TVET qualification framework. So most of the major responsibilities, we are going to be designing responsive curricula and training methods within TVET at that level I've mentioned. Coordinating TVET provisions, of course, the TVET programs that are running in different TVET schools. We are going to be overseeing that and coordinating that. We are going to be very keen on trainers' capacity development, which is very important also if we are to deliver good and quality TVET. And also promoting the use of ICT in TVET. I think my friend Alex is going to talk much about this in his presentation. So those are the main responsibilities that were given to Rwanda TVET board when it was being established. And you'll see that it is just going to be focused. When you look at the responsibilities that WDA had, we are just getting some of those and just be specific on, and we also let other things like accreditation and examinations to other institutions so that we can only focus on TVET provision and coordination.
Tony,
these are just the strategy.
Sorry, Tony, just a quick time check, maybe 2 more minutes to wrap up, if possible.
All right. So these are just strategic areas that TVET board is looking at, but they are still also in those responsibilities that I've just mentioned. And very quickly on the challenges that the TVET system in Rwanda is facing, and I think this is kind of similar to so many other places. We still have a negative mindset towards TVET. So most people still look at TVET as a second choice. They don't look at it as the first choice in their path career. We also have a problem of insufficient financing. We are still struggling, government is still struggling with the right financing model for TVET, insufficient training, infrastructure, and resources. We have a very keen issue with qualified TVET trainers, but also a high turnover of them because most of them are very, very good in technicalities, so they are easily taken away. And we're still struggling with the industrial involvement in TVET, and also still struggling with collaboration with regional and global TVET institutions for benchmarking. What are the aspirations for TVET board and also TVET system in Rwanda? As NSTI, we are targeting a 60% enrollment of all students from 9-year basic education to TVET It is around now at 34 something. And then we are also aiming at delivering this creation of more than 200,000 more jobs, off-farm jobs annually. We are looking at a 90% employer satisfaction within the TVET for the TVET graduates, and 86% employability rate of TVET graduates. We're also looking at 100% TVET connectivity with the internet, 70% of all the TVET schools with at least 2 smart classrooms. We're also looking at 90% of most of the training content within the TVET digitized, and we're also planning to pull more industry to be involved in Tibet. I think that's all with the overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony. So I just pointing to a comment Tony made on the importance of TVET and upskilling, but also in terms of certification and the importance of that as a signal for young Rwandans when they enter the labor market. And I think that's a point that feeds in very nicely to our next presentation from Vittorio Bassi, Assistant Professor at the University of Southern California. And he is going to take us through a presentation on the potential of soft skill certification in complementing TVET education. And after his presentation, we'll have a few comments from Viata Inza-Banita. He's the head of strategic capacity development at the RDB. So Vittorio, you can take it away.
Thanks very much, Anna. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm going to talk about the role of certifications with a focus on the role of soft skills. And in doing so, I'm going to try and draw some lessons from some research that I've done in Uganda. So starting from a kind of a broad, at a broad level, when we think about the challenges the young workers or young individuals face when trying to enter the labor market and find remunerative employment, we can really distinguish this into 2 classes of challenges. On the one hand, workers might lack kind of adequate skills that meet the demand of employers. On the other hand, also workers, even though they might have skills, they might still face substantial challenges in finding the right jobs. And this might be because of kind of search costs, or also inability to signal their skills to potential employers. So you might have the skills, but it might be hard for you to show these. Now, as we've been discussing, TVET training is really designed, the training component of TVET is designed to alleviate the first challenge, right? It's designed to give workers employable skills. There's also then, however, a second component of TVET and in general labor market policy here that is going to be important, and it's the certification component, creating a skill certificate, because that's going to potentially allows workers to alleviate the second challenge, which is the challenge of not being able to show their skills to potential employers. So the certificate provides a signal about the workers' skills that they can use in the labor market. Now, as we think about certifying skills, there are 2 kinds of skills that usually we think about, right? There's going to be hard skills and soft skills. Now, hard skills, just to bring everybody on the same page, we usually think of hard skills as being technical skills. So here I'm thinking about, mathematical ability, welding skills, computer skills. But then there is also soft skills, and these are defined commonly as non-technical or social skills. So here I'm thinking about communication skills, creativity, interpersonal skills, social skills, and so on. And now there's been a lot of research, both in higher income countries and lower income countries, that especially in recent years, soft skills are becoming more and more important. They're more and more sought after by employers, and they're more and more rewarded by employers. However, as you think about soft skills, think, for example, about creativity, think, for example, about, social skills. These are just by nature kind of difficult to observe at the time of recruitment in a firm. Compare them, for example, to technical skills that can be easily tested very, very quickly, potentially by an employer. It might be much more difficult to get a sense of whether somebody is going to be coming on time, is going to have a good work ethic, is going to be nice to customers and so on. And so, of course, the kind of difficulties in showing skills, and in particular soft skills, might really be an issue, especially for young job seekers. They have no labor market experience. Perhaps they are not able to provide kind of reference letters from previous employers or things like that. So there's been a lot of research. So today, of course, as a researcher, I'm going to talk more about what research has been doing. There's been a lot of research on the importance of skill certification in Africa, and especially for young workers. Now, there is one caveat here. So I'm going to talk about two studies briefly in this slide. There is one caveat. None of these studies that I'm going to talk about here refer specifically to TVET students or to soft skills specifically. Nevertheless, I think they are very important to show the power of skill certification. There is a recent study from Ethiopia where the researchers, this is an IGC team, they work with unemployed youth. These are unemployed youth in Addis Ababa, and they certify a mix of kind of cognitive or non-cognitive or hard and soft skills. And so like a group of workers got the certification and another group of workers didn't get a certification, but they have the same skills, exactly the same skills. One group gets a certificate, one group doesn't. The group that gets a certificate 4 years after getting the certificate has 25% higher earnings. Okay, the only thing that changes between these two groups is the one has a certification. So this is a pretty powerful, I think, demonstration of the power of skill certifications in a similar context. They did a similar study, a World Bank team in South Africa, again with unemployed. So both these studies are with kind of unemployed, disadvantaged young individuals. This is clearly not the typical TVET graduate, but I'll get to that in the next slide. So again, here they certify a mix of hard and soft skills, cognitive, numeracy, English, and so on. And they find, again, a positive impact, almost a 20% increase in employment and a 30% increase in earnings after 3-4 months. So a similar magnitude to the other study. Again, this is purely the effect of the certificate. The skills are the same. This is just the effect of the certification. So it shows the power of the certificate. Of course, you might wonder, how these results apply to TVET graduates, because the kind of samples that I've talked about, these are particularly disadvantaged individuals. They are young, these are, out of work, they're struggling to find employment. So you might expect maybe the results are particularly large for them. So what we did in Uganda in recent years, we did a study with TVET graduates focusing on soft skill certifications. So what we did, we partnered with the BRAC Uganda NGO. This is the largest NGO in the country in Uganda, one of the largest NGOs in the world. And we partnered with several vocational training centers in Uganda. So the kinds of workers that we're working with here are very similar to the typical TVET, kind of lower level TVET graduate. So what we did, we realized that at these vocational training centers, at least in the Uganda context, and I'm interested to hear more about the Rwanda context too, there wasn't formal certification of soft skills going on, right? So the typical graduate would get a certificate saying that they were good at welding and they had studied some, maybe perhaps math or other kind of theoretical skills, but there wasn't any kind of certification on their soft skills or work ethic or social skills. And so we did an intervention where we assessed the soft skills of graduates. We created certificates with grades on these soft skills, and these certificates are in addition to regular TVET certificates. And then we arranged job interviews with a potential group of employers, and we followed up with the workers that got the certificates to study how the certificates can help them in these job interviews, and then later on also in their labor market search. So let me tell you quickly how we did this certificate, how we created these certifications. The first thing that we did that I think was very important, we asked employers, potential employers, which soft skills particularly they found were important and they wanted to have more information about. And so they told us some that in this context, these are SMEs in Uganda, and they told us things like creativity, trustworthiness, communication skills, being pro-social, so being willing to help other people, and of course being having good attendance or timekeeping. And so we did these are some of the soft skills that were mentioned as important, and skills that are not discussed in the certificates that workers typically get from vocational institutes. So we measure these through a combination of teachers. So we assess them at the vocational training centers through teacher surveys and through some psychometric scales. So this is just an example of what we did. This is just an example of a teacher survey. So of course, the teachers at these vocational institutes, they have been in contact with these workers for 2 years on average, so they might be able to comment on their timekeeping class or their attendance or their communication skills based on the behavior of these workers in class. So we basically ran a teacher survey where we asked teachers to assess their trainees. For example, you can see here on communication skills, for example. Of course, some skills were harder to observe based on in-class behavior, like creativity or trustworthiness. And so for those, we use psychometric scales that have been kind of validated in other contexts. For example, here you can see an example of questions that of a scale that workers had to, graduates from the VTI had to answer for creating a creativity scale. And these scales have been validated in other contexts. So they typically work by having a series of questions, and then you answer these questions. That kind of elicits your personality trait or your soft skill. What we then did, we put these skills, so for example, creativity, trustworthiness, and so on, we certified them. So we put them on a certificate together with grades. We ask, of course, the teachers we grade these skills. We create a report card, if you want. But what is important here is this is in addition to any other kind of certification that these workers are already getting from the vocational institutes. They are already getting a certificate on their hard skills. So this is an additional piece of paper that we think is important, though, because it highlights some skills that it might be difficult for employers to get a sense of, like creativity, attendance, communication. What is critical, of course, and this is always important for any certification, is that the certificate must be credible and must be verifiable. So the certificate here is credible because it has it was conducted and it has the stamp of BRAC, which is the largest NGO in the country. Everybody knows BRAC and trusts BRAC in this context. And of course, at the back of the certificate, we had a lot of information about how the skills were assessed and how to find more information about the assessments through a hotline and phone numbers. And then some workers, in addition to getting their regular certificates from the VTC, they also got this certificate. And so we document kind of 3 main results from giving out these certificates. The first is that when we ask employers what they thought of the workers, those employers that saw the certificates, the soft skills certificates, had a more positive assessment of the worker skills during these job interviews that we set up. And what it's interesting is that this is true for almost any worker. There are almost nobody, basically the employers only revise upwards their beliefs on how good the workers are. They never really revise them downwards, even for workers with kind of relatively low skills. Because of course, some workers kind of had higher skills than others on these certificates. And the reason is that, in fact, our workers kind of score high on at least one skill. So everybody seems to be good at least at something, and the employers seem to appreciate that. And also we document that the employers kind of came to this thinking that the workers were going to be relatively low on these soft skills. And so they're kind of surprised positively. So this is important, right? Because we document a setting where employers might expect, since they don't know these skills, they might expect workers to have low values on these skills. And so they might be then positively surprised by a certificate that actually can show those. The second result is we find an improvement in match quality. So thanks to the certificate, workers that have a particularly high value on one soft skills, for example, communication skills, become more likely to be hired by a firm that value that skill. For example, a firm that has where workers interact with many customers. So that's important, right? That tells us about the improvements in productivity potentially and efficiency. We don't see an overall effect on employment, as employment rates are already pretty high, also in the group that doesn't get the certificate. So it's really about the match quality rather than the overall employment. And then we see a positive effect on earnings. Conditional employment earnings increased by 11%. And again, this is compared to a group that already also has the skills but doesn't have the certificate on the soft skills. So this is not the effect of training. This is the effect of the certificate only. On top of this, there is also the effect of training, which is, we know it's from other studies, is important. So let me just conclude in the interest of time. So I think there are 4 key results that come out of this discussion. Now, the first is that certification, like proper certification, can be cost effective. It's relatively cheap to certify once you've already trained. And so that's the first message. Now, the second is, I want to be a little careful here. As you scale up kind of a certification intervention, you make it mandatory for everybody to get their skills certified. It's possible, of course, that some workers with very low skills might be negatively affected by this, right? Because these are workers that before didn't need to show these skills, but now they have them assessed. Now, it's just a note of caution, because in our study, participation was voluntary. So some workers decided not to get their skills assessed. And we show that those are the ones that had the lowest skills, in fact, right? So there is a little bit that concern, but perhaps a more important point is that once you start providing certificates on soft skills, this is going to create an incentive for workers to really invest in their soft skills. So potentially even raising the levels of soft skills, which kind of attenuates this issue. We talked about teacher surveys as teachers' assessments as a scalable low-cost option to assess. And finally, bringing this to the Rwanda case, I was trying to review a little bit the strategy, and I liked a lot this competency-based curriculum, because I think my results in my reading of the literature points to the importance of both emphasizing training on soft skills and creating certifications on soft skills. So I saw that in the Rwanda strategy, there is an emphasis on problem solving, creativity, research, communication, cooperation, social skills. Now, this is great. These are very important. So I just want to raise a couple of questions here. Are these skills kind of assessed and certified individually? Can employers then see? I think it's going to be important for employers to see and have a certificate that shows how good the communication skills are, the social skills are of these workers. And one thing that we found very powerful in Uganda, and I would suggest is very important potentially also in Rwanda, is to involve employers in really designing these certifications and the assessments of which soft skills specifically they want to see more information about, and how can this be best kind of assessed and certified. So involving employers in this process could be very, very important. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you, Victoria, for that interesting presentation. Vieta, you can come in with your discuss and comments now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have the privilege to provide comments on this very rich presentation by Vittorio. I will briefly talk about 3 points raised in the presentation and bring them to the context of Rwanda and how I think they should be translated into actionable policy actions. The first point I will talk about is the skills as certificates and how they are assessed. Second, I will go on the future readiness of the national curricula and how the soft skills can be part of the national curriculum. And then finally, I will talk about what I call the skills package concept. But before that, those points, I wanted to just articulate that the National Skills Development and Employment Promotion Strategy has already talked about this. As it articulates, it says that the research has shown that the soft skills will be increasingly demanded to complement the technical skills. With the rise of automation, the soft skills will become more relevant because most of the time, I assume those will be the last skills to be automated. So as Rwanda develops over time and as Rwanda opens up its economy in terms of exports, so it's obvious that we're going to need skilled managers, that is leadership. We're going to need business languages such as English, French, and other soft skills as well as discussed by Vittorio. So the key ideas I was talking about that emanated from this presentation, if I can go on with the first one, which is skills certificates and how they are assessed. It was really articulated that the soft skills are fairly key, but they are very difficult to measure during the interview because most of the time we tend to measure them while people have graduated. So as it was presented, even during those studies, they were measured through a combination of teachers' assessments and psychometric scales. But I have to say that this is done at small scale here in Rwanda, or it is not even done. So to me, I think we could see how we can institutionalize soft skills grading system right from the time students enters the year one of schooling until the end of the national program that he or she is going to pursue. And this will lead to a summative evaluation of soft skills and to be part of the academic transcripts. So what I'm saying is that instead of just waiting for the last year of graduation and use interview techniques and also a teacher assessment, how can we institutionalize this grading system from year one, and then at the end of a year, every year a teacher be able to rank those soft skills, because the teacher most of the time who have was students at in a legal Rwandan context. I always recommend to start by piloting some training institutions, to see how it works and scale up to other institutions. And we have very good best practice locally. If you look at how in Rwanda public service is done, we all know how the soft competencies are evaluated at the end of each fiscal year. So we have this results-based management system where at the end of a particular fiscal year, we evaluate, managers evaluate the soft competences of all the workers. And this is done through a system, and it can be accessed over time by any decision maker or anyone who has access to that. So this is the same idea I'm seeing for our educational institution. Is it possible to regularly check or evaluate the soft skills and be able to have a scorecard at the end of a year for a particular student, and be able to produce a certificate as the one Vittorio showed, that is summative for all the period that the student has been in a school, not just at the end of a training period. So on the second point, which is the future readiness of the curricula and making soft skills part of the national curriculum, this is actually one of the interesting points I got from the presentation. I have to say that for an optimistic vision of the future of jobs, as many reports have shown, there is a need to develop the skills needed today, but also starting building the skills needed to successfully leverage the technological advances of tomorrow. Because given how the world is changing rapidly with these technological innovations. So to build this pipeline of future skills, it is recommended that educators should begin encouraging critical skill thinking, creativity, cognitive flexibility, and emotional intelligence, to name by a few, as they were presented. But now the question is, so how can we teach critical thinking? How can we teach creativity in Rwandan context? Is that possible? Is that being done? Very quickly, I will run you through the experience I got very recently, actually with my daughter. In one of her science class, she asked me a question about, she was learning about compost, this organic and inorganic compost that decompose and to make, plant nutrients. So she asked me, what is that? I explained that to her, what it's about and how it is used to, in planting, in cultivation. That was before lockdown. And then after lockdown, she got her homework. She asked me the same question. I don't remember what this word is. And then I explained to her again, this is compost. So I realized, I remembered one thing. She did not see compost anywhere. But I remembered, lucky enough, we have places where we make compost using garden and cultivation. Lucky enough, I asked her, do you actually know where compost is? Have you seen compost in one of our gardens? So she said no. I was disappointed, but I realized that was my mistake, because neither myself nor the teacher had not shown how what compost looked like. And also they did not tell her about how they can use it to solve the world problem. So you know how children always play around the garden and plant some like 2 to 3 or 5 beans. She had that, but she didn't know that when you have those plants, you can use compost, to nourish them for them to become better. So you can see which kind of, that shows already the kind of memorization we go through without necessarily being taught how someone can take, combine concepts to solve issues and become a problem. Teaching and learning process is done. There's no observation to learn through the concepts and connect the dots to solve a problem. So there is one researcher who said, which discovered, the research discovered that one critical thinking, it discovered that becoming a skilled critical thinker requires the same amount of practice required to become a highly skilled athlete or musician. That is approximately 10,000 hours. And in a school setting, I don't think even students get to use this number of hours. So that's why we are recommended, teachers, professors are recommended to just not to teach critical thinking, but, to inspire them, students, to continue practicing those skills in their own setting across academic subjects and also in a real life. Once the students are inspired, they can apply those critical thinking skills they learned in class, to improve their life, to solve their day-to-day problems. I will give an example in my personal experience as a teacher, because my career is education.
Viata, just a time.
Yes.
Time check.
Okay,
I think
good.
you're over the allotted time. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there is a paradigm shift from how we are conducting our teaching and learning process. Because if a teacher dedicates much time on a debate and then at the end of the year, the national exams comes being much related to memorization, they will be discouraged to continue this practice. And then I think that we're going to about soft skills program TOT, so that those teachers can go with those skills to train. 1 minute to talk about the skills package concept. I think we need to introduce a skills package concept where training institutions need to guide the students over time in key skills required in the labor market and update those over time. Because one skill can enable you enter the job market and make connections. An example typically in Rwanda is that, we need skills from just soft skills, hard skills, until even those skills we are neglecting. Let's say a driving permit. So why would you face a challenge of lacking a driver who can speak English and French, yet we have a big number of those graduates? That means we focus on one skill set required by that academic year or academic program, but we don't tend to see what the labor market requires as a set of skills. So by conclusion, I think that all these efforts will be complemented by what the National Skills Development Strategy called the performance-based management. Because by there, we are saying that performance here means being able to find a job or create your own by the time you graduate from TVET school. So if institutions or programs are recognized rewarding according to the employment outcome, so there will be motivation to strive to what makes students get a job after graduation. And by the time evidence will show that there is a connection between soft skills and finding a job, or skills certificates and finding a job or positioning yourself in the labor market. So training institutions will embrace those and try to implement. So thank you very much, Chair, Chief Skills Officer, and other esteemed participants. That's what I had as comments to these presentations. I submit, Chair.
Thank you so much, Viata and Vittorio. We'll move right along since we're a bit pressed for time. So the next presentation is by Xiaoyan Lian. She's the lead education specialist at the World Bank. And she's going to take us through lessons from East Asia, as well as the ongoing East African, hi Xiaoyan, as well as the regional East African Tibet initiative. And the discussant on that would be Richard Mufama, country director from the IGC. Over to you, Xiaoyan. You're on mute, Xiaoyan.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Anna. Can you hear me now?
Yes, and if you can put your presentation in full presenter mode, that would be helpful.
Okay, let me do that. Okay. Sorry again. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure. Anna already introduced me, so but I really wanted to quickly say that I'm based right now in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, the World Bank office. Right now, I'm focusing the portfolio for the World Bank in Tanzania and also some East Africa countries. But prior to moving to Tanzania, I was focusing on the East Asia programs on behalf of the World Bank. So Anna asked me to share some experience from East Asia, as well as our ongoing project in East Africa on TVET. I know I only have 15 minutes, so I perhaps will go through very quickly the initial slides. Here I want to sort of rally everybody together to think about what are the current events that are shaping our education sector right now. We have huge growth, but we also have huge inequalities right now. And many countries are going through transformation in the labor market, including Rwanda, for example, as we try to go to middle income or higher middle income and eventually to high income countries focusing on the service sector, the high-end service sector. We have a technology leapfrogging, and there's a lot of demand for digital skills. In fact, it's now a basic requirement to be for digital skill to be part of the skills package. I think that's what Tony was talking about, saying that we need to have a skills package. Then we have now also the digital skills. Increasingly, the world is becoming more global, and there's a lot of cooperation, integration, migration happening within the Africa region, but also beyond. We have youth issues, unemployment, skills mismatches, and we have everybody is faced with climate change and environmental issues as well. And now of course, we have the pandemics. So these changes are constant. And in fact, somebody say, the only thing constant is a change. So there's a lot of expectation now on the education sector. How do we design a system so that the system is adaptive, is flexible on its own, that the education system is not so closed, that we are able to have mechanism both at the high level, but also at the bottom or provider level, mechanism that will allow us to constantly adapt. This is a quick slide in terms of the role of TVET. I know in Richard's opening statement, he has mentioned of these important roles TVET play, that is to, of course, improve the productivity, but also very importantly, actually, this is more and more being recognized. I'm glad to see in Africa as well, is that TVET allow us to go through economic restructuring. If we design the system well, we are able to support our youth, our workers to go also in sync with economic restructuring or upgrading, so that skills are being upgraded constantly. And finally, the third is the role of social inclusiveness, the poverty alleviation. Most of the graduates from TVET tend to be from more poor backgrounds. So this provides a very good option for those youngsters. These are, in a nutshell, 3 very important roles of TVET. And I share with you some of the rates of return from the economic literature. This one is a bit out of date, but if you look at the returns, you will see that TVET has very good social and economic returns. I want to share with you also at very macro level some of the assessment the World Bank has done. We used to use a Sabea instrument and look at TVET systems across many countries, many regions, and trying to create not really an assessment, but a way of categorizing in terms of where we are. We look at 9 different policy dimensions, from the overall system direction, whether it's demand driven, how coordinated the system is. And we also look at oversight. How do we finance training in TVET? What are the standards? What are the pathways? And then finally, we look at service provision level. Are our programs relevant? Excellent. If you look carefully, that those red dots that says SSA, they represent a cluster of sub-Saharan Africa countries. And unfortunately, they tend to lag behind compared to the other regions in all those dimensions. But what we are particularly weak is in terms of being demand-driven, and in terms of coordination, a lot at the system level, but also in the service provision level and the program and ranked not as relevant. So this is a very macro picture, and I'm sorry, it's very generalized, but give us a picture of where we are. But you know, Rwanda or even Africa, it's not unique. Many TVET systems struggle with those challenges. So we try to categorize the challenges at different levels. So you see the system level, you've already heard a lot from the Rwanda cases, that at system level, we tend to have coordination issue. We tend to have financing issue. Financing not just in terms of whether our funding is adequate or not, but also in terms of how we channel the funds, especially public funding. How do we, because those channels are critical. Are the financing mechanism promoting, are we promoting quality? Are we promoting accountability? So we also tend to lack depth and scope in terms of collaboration with the productive sector. There's also an issue about pathways and capacity of the various quality assurance bodies, and also very importantly, management information system, both on the supply side and on the demand side. Lastly is regarding the professionalization of trainers and TVET teachers. I'm very glad to see Rwanda is emphasizing on the importance of human resource for the TVET sector. I think it's long overdue. I'm really glad to see your strategy features heavily on this. But if we look at the service provider level, again, you have insufficient funding. But here I really want to focus a little bit more on the institutional autonomy and accountability. I apologize, I don't know Rwanda that well. I did focus on Rwanda for a little bit, but from the presentation of the strategy, I feel that maybe this aspect can be further strengthened. How do we make the TVET provider institutions more autonomous, but yet more accountable to the results? Across the board, whether it's public or public or private providers, the programs suffer from low quality curricula, lack of attention to soft skills, as has been spoken by the previous speaker, and the type of instruction is pretty theoretical, pretty traditional, and also many of the teacher trainers do not actually have up-to-date knowledge about the industry. And of course, across the board in most of Africa countries, we see a very poor infrastructure, not very well equipped workshops and so forth. So this is a nutshell in terms of the challenges we face, not just for Rwanda, but for many of our countries. Again, this is very generic. What can we do? I see a lot of this already being incorporated in the strategy, in the Rwanda TVET strategy. It's really nice to see. If we have to categorize the reforms intervention in a very macro level, I like to think of them also in these two categories. On one hand is a system level reforms. On the other hand is more institutional level reforms. I think the challenge is really to balance those two approaches. I come from a different region, and I can see very clearly here in Africa, I feel a lot of emphasis is on the system level reforms. This is not just about any program, but also about the World Bank projects. If you look at our projects on TVET, you will see this emphasis is a lot more on system as compared to on direct institutional reform. Here I'm talking about in the past decade, I think we have invested a lot, including Rwanda, on apex agencies, on national qualifications framework, on labor market information, so forth. So what I feel is that we also need to make sure there's a good balancing between institutional reform that will allow those institutions to thrive and allow them to have a capacity, autonomy to make their own curriculum, make their own relevant programs, allow their leaderships to grow, to be accountable. I think if I have to summarize the lessons from East Asia, I think this is a major difference between the reforms we see in Africa compared to the reforms we have seen in Asia. I mean, not just China, but also if you look at Singapore, Korea, and China, you'll find there's a lot more bottom-up emphasis when they were trying to transfer the TVET systems. So I want to make this, and then I'll share with you two cases. Both cases, the World Bank was involved in the financing. The first case I want to share with you is China. In fact, the World Bank supported the TVET reform in China for a long time over a series of 5 or 6 projects. And of course, the country environment is different. The government was quite clear in terms of creating a good environment, and their emphasis was on institutional autonomy and accountability. How do they do that? And they have introduced a series of model TVET institutions. So this is a 3-year matching grants. Every TVET institution can apply based on a proposal and based on the vision. And then once accepted, there is a matching grant from central, provincial, or local governments. The key reforms, most of which are centered on the school level. They involve introducing institutional level industry collaboration mechanism. Sometimes it's a committee or sometimes it's a board, but not just at the institution level, but sometimes these collaboration goes straight to every faculty, every program when they revise the standards, when they develop the niche curriculum. They even develop their own textbooks and training materials. And a lot of those actually, they don't use so much textbooks anymore, but rather very more flexible teaching learning binder type of training materials. There's a lot of capacity building in terms of teachers and trainer and management. One specific policy that China introduced is to require every TVET teacher to not only have an academic qualification, such as a diploma or a bachelor degree, but also a skill certificate along the qualification of skills. And they've also mandate for every trainer to be attached to the industry every year for a certain amount of time. So there were some very specific measures introduced at each institution to make those teachers be more aware of industrial standards. They were also, institutions were also allowed to bring the technician from industry to be part-time trainers. There's very flexible arrangement happening at the local level. Some institutions are even building the R&D capacity, and many of them were required to institutionalize their own graduate tracer study and satisfaction surveys and use that to constantly improve the way they design and implement the programs. And of course, we also supported lots of facilities upgrading to make the training facility much more modern. In a few cases, we did a lot of green and sustainable buildings, technology that involve the virtual reality or augmented reality. So a lot of emphasis was directly on the provider level. So this was supported by the government, but as well as by the World Bank and Asia Development Bank. So what I want to share with you is, again, I want to emphasize the importance of provider level support and institutional autonomy. What does it look like? I mean, we seldom talk about what does it look like within a TVET provider, let's say within your technical secondary school. This slide we got from a consultant we hired from China, looking at what's going on within the provider. So for them, the two themes are always cross-cutting. That is, one is industry collaboration, the other is faculty development. They're very emphatic in terms of developing the training program, developing the curriculum, implementing curriculum, and then going back to revise the curriculum and continue this loop of developing relevant program. I think this is something we are trying to emulate also now in the East Africa TVET projects, which I will share with you later. I think it's important to be more cognizant of what's going on at the provider level and to try to strengthen those directly so that they can carry on excellent programs based on this capacity. There's another thing I want to share with you also from that consultant is in terms of a curriculum system. We talk here a lot about curriculum, and I know the RTB mentioned one of the plan is to develop national curriculum. And I think it's important to think about maybe you can do some examples of curriculum, but why not encourage the providers to develop their own niche curriculum, school-based curriculum? I think it's very important to build that capacity. So when you think about curriculum, I know we talk about skills. There's a talk about a skills package. They talk about soft skills, but yet employer looking for STEM skills, even for service sectors. There's increasingly a need for the digital skills. There's, STEM skills, science, technology, and basic knowledge education. Basic core knowledge is always going to be required. So I think it's important for us to think about curriculum system this is where I feel the East Asian country do better. When they look at a curriculum system, they do not always modularize every part of the curriculum. There's a foundation, there is another foundation, and there are skills modules. There are optional courses. There are cultural events, activity. That is the entire package of the training program. I think I'm not an expert in curriculum, but I want to share with you that it's important for us to think about curriculum not in a bite-sized skill, training modules, but rather in a system that has the foundation, that has the basic skills as well as the cross-cutting skills and professional skills as well. So this is a chart I like very much, is that what do we try to achieve with this institutional reform models? Ideally, we want to promote a virtuous cycle of curriculum development implementation right at the provider level. We're talking about institutions have its own capacity to engage the industry, to institutionalize that engagement, define their standards, and translate that into curriculum. Use that curriculum to guide the facilities training, to guide the assessment, and to certify the students. So to form this virtuous cycle is very important. So just to quickly share with you the role of TVET in the Chinese development. The government is quite clear. They want to channel half of the students from basic education to TVET. And so right now, the ratio is quite close. So whether you look at secondary TVET or tertiary TVET, there is close to 50-50 division. The Chinese government recently just actually transformed or changed 1,000 research university into applied university. So they're very strongly emphasized of TVET as a strategy. There is a very vibrant, very energizing, diverse type of collaboration at institution level with industry. We talk about internships. We talk about institutions asking our training, industry asking training institutions to provide training for their workers. We talk about faculty attachments, very vibrant collaboration happening at that level, at the grassroots level. So right now, every year, China graduates about 6 million from the secondary TVET schools, and about 95% of employment rate. And of course, the pathway is open now, so 10% of them choose actually to continue to tertiary level studies. It's also possible. I also want to share with you one of the World Bank projects right now, that is East Africa Skills for Transformation Regional Integration, that involves Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. This is a relatively new project, but the model is similar to the Center of Excellence or model TVET institutions I talk about on China. Here, we selected competitively about 16 such institutes in the 3 countries. The selection is mainly done by the government, but we also provided some vetting in the last stage. The idea is to increase access, improve the quality, but also to support regional integration with this project. It has 3 different components, 1, 2, 3, but the main component is right at the institution level. Here we call strategic investment plan. So each institution, when they applied, they already had to put together a proposal of what they would like to do in the next 5 years. What is a vision in terms of quality, in terms of service to students? And so we work with them, we develop the 5-year strategic plan. And in the plan, you will see that there is a management improvement aspect. There is industry linkage aspect. There's a lot of emphasis to develop market relevant programs. We have especially emphasized for them to to take the industry certified program, short-term programs to start with as a way of, taking the standards and taking the competency requirements from the industries and also to boost their own income in the short term. We also, of course, plan to provide lots of training facility equipment. I think each one of the institutions receive about $10 to $20 million in the next 4 or 5 years. And within that, we also encourage partnerships for those institutions to partner with especially the upstream, secondary level, technical training schools, but also in regional and international partnership with other institutions. I'm not going to focus too much on the component 2 and 3, but 2 is mainly in terms of the national enabling environment at the national level, and 3 is a regional level. The regional coordinator for this project is the IUCEA that based in Uganda. So right now it's still relatively new, but each of those flagship institutes have now a strategic plan, and they have, all of them have already an industry advisory boards with more than 50% representation from the private sector. And many of them have lots of collaboration MOUs established with the productive sector. And many of the programs are now being rolled out. I don't have all the numbers, but I know that student enrollment is improving. Number of programs, so-called relevant programs, are improving also, and they are all currently designing the new training facility infrastructure about to construct and procure. I want to just a couple of minutes talk about what kind of partnership they are now, trying to introduce at the institution level. They all of them have a governance council or advisory body now with representation from the private sector. And some of them are local, some of them are regional, but even in some colleges, they already have multinational companies, corporations involved in those training bodies. A lot of them are using those advisors from the industry to develop curriculum. And we are encouraging them to use this body to vet the school-based curriculum, training curriculum. They are doing a lot of customized training for industries like Arusha Technical College for example, in Tanzania, or the Wingate Polytechnic in Ethiopia, where they are making some kind of training for a company that produced refrigerators. So they want to train the employees. So the college developed this program. Of course, as a result, the faculty capacity improved. As a result, they were able to mobilize funding from the companies. I think this is a very productive way of engaging, a very practical way of engaging the two together. There's a lot of sharing of technology, and there's a lot of internships and so forth. Every one of them are starting to do their own R&D on the curriculum. And we start by doing the graduate tracer study, and we ask them for each college to have their own designated officer who actually can organize, become a liaison person with industry, organize graduate alumni affairs, and reach out to the industry for surveys and so forth, for employment fairs and jobs fairs. So this is now very much going on among all the 16 colleges. So at the regional level, there's of course, and there is an infrastructure, and we have twice a year meeting. These meetings have becoming a very important platform for different colleges to share their experiences. There's also some effort in harmonizing the qualifications and standards. This is being led by IUCEA together with the Tibet authorities in the 3 countries. So we also manage as a project mobilize scholarships from China. Of course, this is just a beginning. I hope we can mobilize from other partners as well. But right now, the 100 scholarships will target on faculty training for the 16 colleges. We have done also regional level tracer studies. We have participated in skills competition, and the regional units also providing lots of technical assistance, and as well as monitoring evaluation of the whole project. So this is another example I want to share today here. Again, the emphasis is very much on institutional autonomy, on center of excellence, and trying to channel, give such intense dose of financial technical support to those colleges to hopefully to make them the regional flagships for TVET that can actually ignite a very, very, very good transformation or a culture of TVET that can help advocate, improve the image of TVET for the region. I will stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Xiaoyang. I'll now invite Richard Mufama to give around 5 minutes of comments.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, Charlotte, for this very nice presentation. This is actually quite rich, and you've covered a lot of territory. What your presentation does for me is, among other things, raise 5 questions that I would ask of the Rwanda TVET strategy, because I think you've touched on some really important topics. The first question has to do with the tracer studies, because it does seem to me that tracking students coming out of the TVET system, where they go, what their earnings are, and how they're fitting into industry is really important. And it does strike me that I wonder if the tracing studies are being done as adequately in Rwanda as they are in China. One thing we see in the China case, for example, is that 95% of graduates seem to get employment, whereas in Rwanda that number seemed, if I understood the earlier presentation correctly, only 70% are becoming employed. So that question leads me to wonder whether or not the system is actually engaged with the private sector sufficiently. In any case, so the first question is, are the tracking systems working? And as part of that, is success being measured and then rewarded through a matching grant system or through the allocation of resource process? You mentioned, Xiaoyang, that in China there was a matching grant system. Presumably it had to do with the performance of the school itself. I wonder in Rwanda if there is such a similar system that rewards success in terms of employment. Okay, so that's the first general set of questions. The second set of questions has to do with the private sector input. This is something you emphasize quite strongly, and I think comes out of both the East African project as well as the China story, and the involvement of the private sector at various levels in the governance of the TVETs, and in even you mentioned public-private partnerships, and I wonder if this goes to the issue of ownership and whether or not there is maximum involvement of the private sector in the Rwandan case. The third question has to do with sort of the balance of skills in the curriculum. Obviously, for the hard skills, to use Victoria's formulation, it makes a lot of difference whether or not you're training for the hotel industry or training for the manufacturing industry. And I wonder, in the case of Rwanda, if the alignment is correct between the TVET sector and the productive sector of the economy. I mean, Rwanda is very much a services-oriented economy. So are there specialized schools, for example, for tourism, as opposed to machine operators for manufacturing? And is that balance right? And of course, throughout in both cases, is the balance between hard skills and soft skills adequate? That's a third question I would ask of the Rwandan strategy. The fourth question has to do with the regional nature that came out of Xiaoyang's presentation of the World Bank project, the emphasis on regional development. My question here has to do with labor market regulations. Is it easy to import skills? Because importing people to employ in your various enterprises is a way of transferring skills because learning occurs in that process. So I wonder if labor market regulations are an impediment or facilitating of importation of skills that would be important in the TVET sector. And then finally, my question coming out of the discussion of the World Bank project, hey, why not include Rwanda in the World Bank project? And what would it take to bring Xiaoyang to Kigali and get the World Bank to put up a little money into this whole process? I certainly would like to see that. In any case, thanks very much. A terrific presentation, and I'll stop here.
Thank you, Xiaoyang and Richard, for a rich presentation and also a insightful set of comments. So we are now on our last presentation. I know we're a bit behind, but I expect us to finish by 5 p.m. and hopefully those interested in the Q&A can stay for a few minutes after. So I'd like to invite Alex Intali to give a presentation on the role of ICT in Rwanda's TVET strategy. The discussant for this is Ashim Ijongobe. She is the CEO of Elevate, and it's an organization based in Nigeria, and she's also the director for Africa operations. So Alex Intali, if you're ready, you can pull up your presentation. And I also just want to ask the attendees if they can just quickly leave their name, their position and organization in the chat box just for RDB and IGC to keep track of who attended. Thank you. Alex, you're on mute.
Hi. Just a second. So,
Excellent. And I should have mentioned, Alex Intali is the CEO of the ICT Chamber. I'm sorry for missing that at the beginning. Thank you and welcome, Alex. You're still on mute.
okay. Okay, I hope this works. Let me share my screen. It's going to end. Can I confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for today. I've been learning quite a few things through your presentations. I'm so sorry, mine may not be as eloquent as what you've presented. My name is Alex Sinhare, and yes, I'm the CEO of ICT Chamber. And the ICT Chamber, I've not done an introduction for it in this presentation, but as an introduction, the ICT Chamber is a member-based organization for private companies in the ICT sector in Rwanda. We have a member base of over 400 companies, some of them from startups, early stage startups, SMEs, ICT SMEs, corporates, as well as consultants. So we're part of a bigger platform, private sector federation that some of you may be more familiar with. My presentation today, as has already been highlighted, is going to focus on the role of ICT in the TVET system and the future of work. Luckily, I've noticed that my colleagues have already described what the TVET system is, how it works, and all that. So my presentation is really going to answer these questions, and in no particular order. So what we are looking at here is the underlying question is ICT a major sector for job creation or job growth in Rwanda? And that answer is going to help us to see what whether the TVET system is adequate and where really where we should be focusing in terms of adapting ICT to TVET or TVET education. So my again with the research I've used here, or the research the work, the indicators or the numbers that are in here are quite old. They're being updated. Actually, we've been working with the RDB team in updating this research and trying to really answer whether ICT has jobs. But this is a 2016 survey that was done by Dalberg Research, and it shows that there's over at least within the core ICT jobs and the cross-cutting nature of ICT gives us over 1 million jobs across different sectors require ICT skills, or at least some ICT skills, and this basically starts from the basic ones, what we call, or what most of us know as digital literacy, to the advanced ICT skills. And we all know that Rwanda wants to be an ICT hub. It wants to be a service economy, a knowledge-based economy. And for that really to happen, quite a lot of it is going to have to leverage ICT skills. And the TVET, expansion of TVET and reorganization of the TVET system for us seems to be on spot in terms of prioritizing this. There are 4 categories of skills: content creation and management, equipment and hardware management, then content processing, as well as and digital literacy. So here we will see at different stages in the labor market, from basic technicians straight to the knowledge workers. But before, yeah, I think right now we can start diving into the numbers. So jobs today, or jobs as of 2016, unfortunately, ICT jobs then were estimated, or ICT related jobs were estimated at about 1 million. And these numbers Dalberg gives are also reflecting, they're reflected in the National Institute of Statistics research that was done. So they're basically, that's where their source is. So they didn't just come up with them. But as you can see here, there's at least as of that time, there was 22,000 jobs, core ICT sector jobs, and another 1 million jobs that require some level of ICT skills. And as we transform the economy from agrarian and so on, there's need for us going into 2030. There's really high demand for ICT skills across the entire spectrum of both levels of knowledge, levels of education, but as well as geographically, whether in urban, but as well as in the rural areas. And case in point, maybe those of you who follow the news may have noticed that yesterday or this week, There's been, again, distribution of smartphones in rural women, and really trying to connect them and getting them into the ICT space. And the smartphone today, we all know that serves us in terms of the different services that we access. So the estimate here, or the projections rather, are projecting that there will be 3 million jobs that will need by 2030 that need ICT skills. And I know everyone is itching to know where they're probably up, but that's down in the slides. So I talked about the 4 categories, and these 4 categories, this kind of gives us a little bit of scale in terms of knowledge requirements or knowledge complexity that is involved. So digital literacy, as you can see, I had someone talk about the hospitality industry, operating point of sales, whether it is in a supermarket, in a restaurant, in a hotel. So that's at the very bottom. This kind of work can be done by primary school or 9-year education, a 9-year level education, and the numbers they showed here, that this at least as of that time was about 400,000. That increases those numbers all combined from content processing up to content creation and management, increases to about 1.14 by 2030. And today, the bulk of these 22,000 jobs that we saw earlier, you can see is in the content creation and management space. So number of jobs requiring each category, this you can see that in the end still we have about 60,000 at the top in terms of complexity. And that's what now I think as we go, let me just skip this. Okay, yeah, let me skip this and go straight to this slide. Here, the top 4 in terms of complexity is where we see high potential for TVET graduates and even beyond just TVET. It could be university and colleges and so on. But from the 3rd level of complexity, equipment and hardware, we all appreciate and understand that as of today and actually tomorrow, computer-aided manufacturing, computational anything, is what's really, digitalization is what's really going to drive the future. And if that is going to drive the future, given that TVET covers almost, to my knowledge, it covers almost all the entire spectrum of the labor market. Yeah, we see that here there's work that needs to be done if we're to realize this increase in jobs. There is a shortage of skilled machine workers. I think someone earlier talked about it, and limited knowledge of more sophisticated machining. And here I'm not speaking from a theoretical point of view. We run a number of laboratories, one of them being the Digital Fabrication Lab, Fab Lab, where we've been working with youngsters that come out of universities and TVET schools or TVET colleges. And we see the difference. We can compare how long they take to learn, how long they take to adapt, and we believe that I think there was a point on where should government policy, where should focus be. We think this space really needs to be given focus, especially if we're talking about manufacturing made in Rwanda, localizing and all that, and taking advantage of AFCTA and so on. So these here are making sure that graduates, TVET graduates, are really equipped with skills to be able to do machining, to be able to do literally anything, but to have the computational, the computing skills that are needed, whether it's computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing skills, and other sophisticated technologies that could be needed. And we've also been noticing a number of course, software development. TVET schools also teach software development, and we see the attitude, I must say, that the attitude with TVET graduates when they come to labor market in comparison relative to university graduates is much better. The adaptability, the willingness to learn, the openness to learn, the teachability basically is high. And we think that there is an opportunity in that to make sure that we don't wait for them to come out of school, but rather to see how much more can we do industry in partnership with academia or with TVET, with the TVET boards and the rest of the stakeholders to ensure that we actually are getting those skills ahead of time before graduation. So on the going back to the question on major sector for job growth, is ICT a major sector for job growth? According to this Dalberg research, these kind of in this second column, you can see the first column has the sectors: ICT, business services, manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture. And of course, okay. So ICT, yes, it has high sector, whatever, high potential for growth. But we all know some of the sectors that are driving the economy: tourism, agriculture, manufacturing is also picking up, and the jobs requiring ICT here are ranging. As you can see, it's not just software development, it's not machine operations only, but we also need, there are also opportunities at the managerial level, at administrative, receptionists, service people, and sometimes as a customer of some of these facilities, whether it's a petrol station or a restaurant, you get in and then they tell you, oh, this is not working, or this point of sale for payment is not working, or this system is down, the network is down, and so on. And sometimes it's just not really the case, but the fact that someone is not confident, not that they're not skilled, but they're not confident in using this. And I think this, given that TVET covers a broader spectrum, covers most all these sectors, what we really would as industry would appreciate seeing is the embeddedness of ICT in these courses, and not just top layer really having good focus in terms of getting the students during the training, during the entire academic programs, to make sure that they master these skills. And why is that so? Is the numbers speak for themselves. Insufficient ICT proficiency in the agriculture space was found to be at about 92%. Yet the sector has high potential for jobs that require, or that will require, ICT skills, and that's really as we look at the fact that most of these are farmers, if we're gonna cooperatives, which are agricultural cooperatives, form the basis, the best of most of the agriculture sector. And when you look into them, really there is a kind of this insufficient skill set, and the research indicates that it's mostly accountants, agronomists, logisticians, and their technologies or ICT technologies are really permeating all these areas. And we believe that if part of curricula or part of what is being of the training programs, these are really given focus in terms of intentional focus in terms of embedding ICT into the programs. This will also help to unlock this latent potential. You come to tourism, it's more or less the same. Only 3% of the establishments in the sector offer any type of ICT skills training. Most of these are private sector facilities, the hotels, hospitality, restaurants, and so on. And there is, as you have seen in the previous slide, whether it's receptionist, managerial, administrative, and so on, these skills are needed. The tourism sector alone itself, as we have seen during this COVID the pandemic period, is that ICT really has to be leveraged for them to survive, whether it's conferencing as we're doing today. Previously would have been in a conference room. Yeah. So it has to be leveraged. It has to be fully taken advantage of, and the potential is also high. You can see 60,000, 60 or 70,000 jobs require ICT skills in this space, and that is only going to be growing going forward. And I think I had someone mention the fact that importing. Yes, there has been, I had a question that was asked about, I think, movement of labor and so on. Yeah, there are mutual recognition agreements that have been discussed or negotiated that allows free movement of labor across borders in the region. And this is an advantage, as you say, for people to really upskill, but at the same time, obviously, there needs to be concerted efforts to ensure that locals are also able to upskill and get into these jobs. Manufacturing is the same. It's the same thing. Manufacturing for me is a ripe space. I know one will argue we're a small country. Maybe we're not fit for manufacturing and so on. But with the latest technologies, computer-aided design, distributed manufacturing models, business models, we're already seeing that this is possible, that we can specialize in particular areas. It could be even computer-aided design. Case in point, we have some entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that are designing products here. We're prototyping in the Fab Lab, and then they're sending the designs to China for manufacturing 100 pieces, 200 pieces, sizes, batches that they can afford. And the kind of products that they're designing are really so niche that they're not mass products, but at the same time they give them an entry point. And some of these have been at least the most some of the successful ones that we've been working with are TVET graduates. So in a way, to say that the talent that is coming out to a degree is good, but in terms of the question to what can government do, I think there needs to be really concerted efforts in terms of making sure that these prototyping facilities, maybe even other incentives, whether they are fiscal or non-fiscal, are in place to make sure that this sector also grows. So I think I'm running out of time, but soft skills, I think you've seen it already, is one of the challenges. And assessment of skills gaps in the ICT sector here again, we're coming down to now just specifically ICT sector, not ICT for agriculture or ICT for tourism, but for ICT for ICT. So the maybe a little, I saw that Tony touched the point of kind of a progression of or evolution of the education system, or TVET, as you mentioned it. Here, what forms the private sector in Rwanda's ICT sector is mostly young entrepreneurs, fresh grads that decide to become entrepreneurs. And that means basically that these are young people who are not, they've not been employed elsewhere. So they're taking this on, and they're doing everything. They're the marketing, they're the engineers, they are tech support, they're everything, finance, and so on and so forth. So that means that there are gaps, and the gaps that are existing here are what in a fully developed labor market, you'd even well-financed space, you'd find there's specialization, and there's sales engineers, for example, that can help a company to sell its products, and so on. So this is where you see that although the levels in the ICT proficiency are slightly higher than in the other ones, of course it's ICT sector, but the soft skills, the other skills that are needed for business to grow are really are missing. So that's a summary of my presentation, and maybe to go back to some of the question here, if there's still more time for me. So policy areas.
Actually, sorry, just to interrupt, Alex. I think you're done with the allotted time. So if we can give.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ashim a chance to step in. So Ashim Ejungobi is the country manager for Elevate Educate, Nigeria and Africa, and she's going to jump in with 5 minutes of discussion points. Thank you, Ashim, for joining us and for waiting to jump in.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Alex, for that great presentation on, just focusing on how TVET can focus on the ICT sector as well. I think it's such a great conversation to have, because oftentimes I think there is an assumption that in fact vocational training isn't necessarily technical or focused on technical or digital skills. I want to focus a little bit about some of the categories that you talked about. You talked about 4 categories: digital skills, literacy, content processing, then the equipment and hardware management, and then also the content creation, the management and its ownership, sort of, taking the levels up that pyramid. Now, I believe these are fundamental, in fact, to, ensure that across the board, there is not only a focus on TVET, but also, that especially digital skills and the literacy thereof are, successfully implemented. And I'd like to just offer a couple of questions or thoughts with regards to how we can future-proof employability around those skills, and what skills, would be needed for those jobs in the future. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, 9 out of 10 jobs, in fact, will require digital skills. I think this is really important to kind of sink in for a moment. as we think about, okay, well, Alex, kindly took us through all the different sectors of the economy and where, technical skills, for instance, would be applicable. And with that, 9 out of 10 jobs, it really does show that, it is more urgent than ever for all of us on the continent, especially, to focus on how do we ensure that we upskill, that we reskill and cross-skill our people to be able to play in this, global and also local kind of landscape of digital skills. So some of the questions to think about would be, and I think Richard actually touched on this already slightly, is how do we create those partnerships? And I think important that we don't only focus on partnerships on, say, the supply side, right? So how do we increase the supply in skilled workers, digitally skilled workers, technically skilled workers, but also how do we ensure that there is offtake on the other side? So we've got to make sure that we balance out the supply and the demand side. And the question is, well, how do we do that? How do we encourage both the public and the private sector to invest in, creating the skills, but in the end game also, how do we encourage these companies and as well, of course, the government to then employ sufficient workers with these skills? Because if there isn't sufficient demand, then we would be very hard to, kind of convince investors to put their money into, supplying or training in these programs. So I think this is such an important topic to really think about there. And the other one is to say, well, how do we map the requirements of employers today, but also for the future? So Alex spoke a little bit about the future of work and really, what that looks like. And what we know at this point is that pretty much all jobs are going to be impacted in future by technology. But that doesn't mean that all jobs will be lost. It just means that there will be a significant shift and change in how these jobs are being done today. How, what we know today will look different tomorrow. So important in that mapping is also to say, how do we map a journey for those, for these learners, for instance? So say, for instance, the pyramid that Alex talked about, we'd start with the basic digital literacy skills. How do we go from the basic skills, taking somebody to know what is a computer, how do I use it, how do I use a POS machine and all of that, into then the next level of content processing, right? So now I have some data, how do I put it into Excel, make it look good, make it look sensible, and then into the next level where we go into, equipment hardware management, and then the really, kind of fine-tuned one where we actually are content creators, where we are, the owners of the output, not only the consumers. So another question there, I think, for everybody to think about, and for the governments to really, and policymakers to think about as they are designing these policies. The other one would be with regards to how do we harness the power of data? So tracking and tracing is really important. I think even more important is that we establish data around continent relevant, case studies and policies and their outcome, so that we understand, in fact, well, what is the impact that we're having with these programs currently? How many people are we training? How many people are being employed? And if they're not being employed by certain sectors, what is it that is missing in these people that we have trained? Are the skills wrong? Is the knowledge that they did get not sufficient? Is it the quality of the training? So really important that we harness the power of data. There's lots of big data that can be harnessed and leveraged there. And the last question I'd like to let us all think about is with regards to, well, how do we make sure that we start understanding what digital skills or technical skills will help our continent and help drive the development on the continent. I loved when Elodie at the beginning of the session talked about moving Rwanda into a middle income and then a high income economy, you know, in the next couple of decades. And that is a great goal to have. We've got to understand what are those skills that we need to change our economies, to drive us to, you know, think about smart cities in urban planning. What about artificial intelligence and machine learning? How can those concepts help our economies? And what about robotics and automation? Alex spoke a little about manufacturing, right? So, and agriculture. A lot of those processes can be automated for us to be quicker, more efficient, more globally competitive. We talk about things like gamification and UX. There's lots of startups actually that focus on gamification, that focus on UX, and that are able to actually create employment by doing that, because that is a huge sector currently. But then, of course, also we talk about Rwanda currently still being very much a service economy, right? So how do we make sure that we build those digital skills for CX, right? So for the customer experience, so that we can ensure that we continue to attract even more tourism and are able to continue to build the economies with these kind of skills. And with that, I hope, you know, we'll be able to explore these questions in future again. And thank you very much for having me, to everybody, and great to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex and Ashim. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. If any of you would like a question or to ask a question or make a comment, just use the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, and then I will call on you. We're going to try to wrap this up by 5:30, so in a little under 15 minutes. So please keep your comments and questions brief and straight to the point. Thank you. So anyone can raise their hand to ask a question. Because there are quite a number of you online, you can just unmute and make your comment. I think that might be easier given the number of people we have.
I'll jump in and ask a quick question.
Sure, go
ahead. This is, I think, for Tony, because I would be really interested in knowing how the Rwandan government allocates resources among TVET centers. I mean, Tony, you outlined several, quite a high number of TVET entities. Are all of these government supported? And if so, do you try to match performance and in one year with resource allocations in the following year?
Thank you, Richard. Maybe we can take one.
Hi, Anna. I think we have the Ministry of ICT. We also have Rwanda Polytechnics. So I'm sure you have some contributions to make to this very rich seminar. So please feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Elodie. We also have, development partners, so GIZ and a few others on board. So comments are also welcome from our group.
Can I jump in? My name's Dr. James Gashumba. I'm the Vice Chancellor at Rwanda Polytechnic. I'll answer the question by, it was written, the gentleman, I didn't catch your name, about how Tibet is funded in Rwanda. Yes, a lot of it is publicly funded. We have the lower Tibet, what we call the lower Tibet, the secondary level and also lower levels. Of the almost 400 Tibet schools, 63% of those are privately run, and just under 40% is public, funded by government. And then we have about 17 polytechnics, nine of which are public, and eight of which are public, and 9 are private. So yes, it is a big problem funding Tibet. Tibet is costly, so it is a very big problem, and we've been exploring different ways of funding, what we call the Tibet funding model, which we are about to submit to government. Because unlike say in Europe, where private sector plays a big role in the training of vocational students, here in Rwanda, our private sector is still relatively small, so they cannot invest as much as we would like. So that's still a problem, but we are always exploring different ways of funding Tibet, because Tibet is always expensive, because it's hands-on training. It's not just theory or knowledge acquisition. So that's what I wanted to say. But there are other comments I would like to make a bit later. I don't want to take too much time on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else would like to jump in with a question or comment?
Hello.
I think maybe, yes, go ahead.
This is Nimpano Desire from Rwanda Polytechnic. I would like to compliment the presentation done by Rutaisire Tony, especially on the challenges he presented on Tibet. And I just want to tell you that though we have various challenges in Tibet, but there are ongoing initiatives to address the challenges. He talked about the issue of mindset. In some recent years, many students were running away from Tibet, thinking that Tibet is just for failures. Those who failed in other training programs can come to Tibet. We are now changing this traditional mentality through what we call annual awareness campaigns that we organize and encourage young people to join Tibet, showing them many opportunities that are related to Tibetan skill development, and informing them that there are more opportunities related to job creation and business development when you graduate to Tibet. And these awareness campaigns are helping us to get more enrollment for the recent years. Since 2010, the numbers of students joining TVET have doubled almost, because in 2010 we had only around 50 students, but now we are having students in hundreds, in 100,000, whereas it was about 50,000 in 2010. So coming to insufficient financing, government has been putting a lot of resources in Tibet, but you know Tibet is still expensive when it comes to supply of training equipment, teaching materials known as training consumables. It is really expensive. and we have been getting support even from development partners and also involvement of the private sector. But now to find a long-term solution, there is an ongoing development of a TVET financing model. We are thinking about probably introducing what we call a TVET training levy or establishment of a national TVET fund that can put together our resources from various stakeholders and various sources of funds to put them together so that we can address this issue of insufficient fund for TVET as a long-term solution. But this proposal is still under negotiation and under discussions. But when it will be materialized and available, it will solve most of the problems related to budget constraints. Now coming to the issue related to qualified TVET trainers, we have experienced an issue of a limited number of trainers, but recently we were lucky to be supported by COICA through the Korean government support, and we established an institution called Rwanda TVET Trainer Institute. It's first of its kind as a training institution, which will be mainly focusing on skills upgrading for our trainers, so they can upgrade their skills in terms of communication skills in English, ICT skills, pedagogical skills, teaching methodologies, as well as technical skills. And this will help us to address the issue of a limited number of qualified trainers. He also mentioned about the issue of private sector engagement, especially in internship and in industrial attachment programs. We have developed a workplace learning policy, and this workplace learning policy highlights the role of the private sector and the proposals of incentives that can be used to attract the private companies to get involved in TVET delivery and skills development in Rwanda. And its implementation, the implementation of that policy will help us to attract more private sector to get engaged in skills development, especially to industrial attachment programs and in-company training for both our trainers and our students. Thank you very much. Those are my contribution to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree. We have a hand up from Mineduk. Mineduk, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Nyongabo from the Ministry of Education. I thank you for this webinar and presenters. They have made a very good presentations. I have two comments. One, can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly.
Okay. One is about the curriculum development. Our colleague from the World Bank mentioned where the very good cycle of the curriculum development, which starts with the development of competence standards. Other people they call occupational standards. That's a very important step for a very well designed curriculum in the TVET system, which is a step number one. So we still have a gap in Rwanda. As we attempted to develop each curriculum, we make what we do, a red market. The needs assessments as well as any competence, occupants is concerned. So we need really to think about the occupational standards or competence standards so that we can really develop a very curriculum that is responding to the labor markets instead of attempting to develop curriculum which sometimes do not respond to our needs. So for example, if we are developing a curriculum for culinary art, we should know the standards of that curricula that trade culinary art at various levels of occupants. So this is very important. So the role of labor side or employer side is very important into this. As education sector, as supply sector supply side is very concerned, but also the demand side, the employer side may play a very important role in the development of these occupational standards. Of course, we may have those regionally developed standards like East African ones. So we need really to contextualize them in the context of Rwanda and make sure that our curricula respond to what we need in the market. So the other comment is about I think it's Alex. Is Alex Nale who talked about the future of work. I'd like to add, I'd like to think of the future of skills. So the work should go hand in hand with skills. Today, we try to respond to the needs. To skills need today. We introduced some programs such as rapid response training and so on. So this means that we do not really plan ahead to anticipate the future skills that we need. So we need to plan we need to have a long-term planning and anticipate the skills that we will need in the very future. Comparing to the technology we have and the technology which is coming, and really plan accordingly, develop curriculum accordingly, introduce some important equipment or industry accordingly, so that we can really anticipate the future of skills, so that we can also make sure that the future of work is ensured with the future, with the skills that we need at labor market. So TVET is important into this, and planning together at both sides, demand and supply side, is important for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think to spare everyone's evening, we will probably end here. I would like to invite Elodie to make some short closing remarks. If any of you are interested in the set of presentations from today, I've put my email in the chat box, so you can just shoot me an email out and I'll send them over to you. If you haven't yet, please just introduce yourself in the chat box so we know who attended. And finally, the comms team has asked everyone after Elodie's comments to just turn your video on so they can take a wonderful screenshot for social media. So hopefully you'll hang out until Elodie is done with her remarks and we can make the comms team happy. Thank you all for joining. I think we could have easily gone for another 30 minutes. It's been such a rich conversation, and I thank you for sticking around and for your time, and to the presenters for sharing their expertise and their knowledge. Thank you, and over to you, Elodie.
Thank you, Anna. I'm trying to set up my camera. For some reason, it's not turning on, but I hope you can see me now.
Yes, it's turning on. So
all right. So panelists, participants from this seminar, what more can I say? Really, thank you so much for this very rich seminar. I think the panelists have touched deeply on all angles of strengthening the TVET sector in mind of the future of work, the future of skills. This is a new word I've learned today, and ICT as an enabler. This has been such a great, insightful, and significant learning seminar. filled with so much rich content. I think we need to be having more of such webinars to exchange on best practices, whether they're institutional, whether they're from private sector, and even at a global level. We were very happy to have great panelists on this call, and we hope that we can have many more of these to be able to learn and exchange on best practices based on existing strategies. So we cannot thank you enough for listening in. I truly hope the recommendations that were shared by many of the panelists, which I'm not able to capture in a summarized way since there was a lot of good content, that I'm sure when this webinar it has been recorded, and when it's shared, I'm sure we can derive much more from the session today. And based on the lessons learned, I think we can take some actionable next steps and advocate for TVET advancement, institutional reforms, as was mentioned by the World Bank expert, and even at a larger extent to really become more digital, knowledgeable in the digital era, and also involve ICT in the TVET sector. We need to continue to collaborate very strongly between our organizations, whether it's to help strengthening the supply and demand of skills, and continue thinking about bridge programs to upskill and reskill, while pathwaying job seekers with a focus on TVET graduates into job opportunities. So Anna, without further ado, I think we can call this to an end, but to make this much more actionable and fruitful, we will be able to share this webinar on different social media outlets and share with you on email. And then we can also have maybe another session of this, a continued session of this webinar in maybe a month or so from now to see whether there are actually some strategies that can be taken into consideration when we think about funding opportunities and other partnerships that some of our panelists emphasized on. So thank you so much, and wishing you all a happy Easter weekend.
Thank you so much, Elodie. So now just staying on for maybe 1 minute. Those who can, if you can turn on your videos. Norbert, you can jump in and help coordinate us for your...
Thank you, Anna. I hope you can hear me. Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, can I just first have the panelists and the discussants just switch on their camera? So whoever talked today, can you just switch on your camera, and we'll first take that screenshot. I don't know, we're still missing Elodie.
I hope you can see. I'm trying to fix my camera. I hope you can see me now.
Yeah, that's fine. I see. We're still missing a few people, I think.
So, Shem, I'm not sure if she's still on. I think Ashim has jumped off. We will probably have to do this without her.
Okay, Viater, anybody else? Okay, I think let's go to the rest of the group, the whole group. So can everybody turn on their screens?
Norbert, this is the first time I've done this, so it's quite exciting.
Good to end a good discussion.
The comms team is working hard at RDB. I can definitely tell.
Okay, just give me a few more seconds and do we have any more people joining with their screens? Maybe let's just give them a second or two and then
dressing up, yes.
thank you. I think we've got enough. Thank you very much, everyone. And just look out for Skills Rwanda, and we will be posting all that on there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.